Hello, everyone. So, just to get into this, the article that I found is Mapping the Profit Motive, the Distinct Geography and Demography of For-Profit Charter Schools by W. Brett Robertson, published in 2015. And as the title indicates, Robertson's work essentially examines the geographic traits and the demographic characteristics of the student bodies of for-profit charter schools. And his article does bring up a number of interesting concepts and findings. So first of these is that Robertson argues that it seems that the different overall goals and priorities of for-profit versus non-profit charter schools impact and shape their decision-making and the general mindsets of each type of institution. He seems to imply that for-profit charter schools, a lot of their decision-making can be justified when viewed through the lens that they prioritize profit, and that they're seeking their main goal is to maximize profit. Whereas when compared to nonprofit charter schools, their decision-making is justified and makes a lot more sense when viewed through the lens that they're working towards a mission or trying to accomplish a goal, and that that's their main priority, is working towards that goal or that mission. That shapes their decision making. The second crucial concept from this article is that there is a pattern when it comes to certain attributes of for-profit charter schools, namely that for-profit charter schools tend to locate in wealthier areas of cities, and they tend to tailor their marketing to try and attack students from a higher socioeconomic status background. And Robertson implies there are a number of reasons from this that could potentially stem from the desire to maximize profit. He mentions that wealthier students, or students that come from families of higher socioeconomic status, tend to do better academically, and they're just more likely to perform better academically than students from poorer families. And he also highlights that for most parents, the primary factor in determining which charter school to send their child to comes down to proximity. So Robertson implies that by locating in wealthier neighborhoods and marketing specifically to try and target and lure to bring in students from wealthier families, effectively, these for-profit charter schools are focusing primarily on a specific socioeconomic group to maximize profit, and that comes at the expense of underserving areas of higher poverty and lower socioeconomic status. And that kind of ties into the third crucial concept that Robertson brings up in his article, and that is that charter schools in a lot of urban settings actually tend to contribute and intensify segregation and social stratification in schools. He does mention that there's no set pattern, there's no set demographic or socioeconomic group that each charter school targets, but within each individual charter school, there tends to be a predominant racial and socioeconomic group that predominates, which ultimately contributes and creates a situation of pretty intense segregation and stratification within schools. And this actually does kind of tie into Nogueira's point and Nogueira's mindset, as this is a prime example of how areas, particularly urban areas, most in need of help, that are generally underserved, these areas of high poverty and low economic opportunity are once again being left underserved by an institution or institutions that, in theory, should provide additional options to try and help the students there, namely by showing that a lot of, in this case, for-profit charter schools generally ignore those areas because they're less likely to make a profit there, and it's viewed as too risky of an investment. However, Robertson does inspire some hope in that nonprofit charter schools, by contrast, are actually more likely to locate in low-income areas and focus on serving the most high-need populations because, again, their main concern, he argues, is working towards a goal, usually that goal being something along the lines of helping the people who are most in need of help. So it is kind of interesting to see how this article does kind of follow Nogueira's argument of pragmatic optimism, that there are problems, but there is also a potential solution that is there. Moving on to the gun violence source. Overall, I agreed with most of this source's suggestions and proposals to try and regulate or minimize gun violence. Things like universal background checks, placing restrictions on the types of weapons that are available, and drastically increasing funding and resources to better provide mental health services both in communities and at schools. I agreed with all of that. The biggest disagreement I had, though, was the source's proposal for gun violence protection orders, which are effectively allow law enforcement to temporarily confiscate firearms from individuals it deems to pose a threat to public safety. To me, at least the way that this is worded in the source, there's a lot of potential for institutional misuse and abuse of power there. They seem to be placing the authors seem to be placing a lot of trust on law enforcement agencies to use this power responsibly and only use it against individuals that they do have evidence of presenting an imminent threat. To me, that's an overly optimistic view of expecting a responsible exercise of power by American political and government institutions. Moving on to the last question over the jails source. Overall, I disagreed with a lot of what this article had to say. Now, I think he does highlight an important notion, that being that public school and private school teachers alike can't disregard the insights and skills and talents of each other, and that there are things that public schools can learn from faith-based schools, and vice versa. There are things that private schools can learn from public schools. I think it would particularly be interesting for public schools to look at whether or not some of the success of religious schools stems from their basis on an explicit ideology or philosophy, and if that does seem to contribute to something, that might be something to look at potentially integrating into public schools. However, my main issue or objection to Jails's article is that I ultimately feel that he's misrepresenting a lot of the data he finds, because he's leaving out a key reason, what I think is one of the key reasons why private schools generally do outperform public schools, and that being that private schools can pick which students they admit. And it's reasonable to expect that private schools will only admit students they deem to be high ability, or students that have a a good chance of academic success, which will thus allow them to perform better. And when you compare that to public schools who can't deny admission to students, I think that has a lot bigger impact on why you see a lot of private schools outperforming public schools than the unique attributes of these private faith-based schools that Jails seems to think so highly of. Interesting readings this week. A little over time, but I look forward to seeing what everybody else has to say.